Jordan Klepper, you host the hilarious show, The Opposition, with Jordan Klepper on Comedy Central. What made you think that this type of parody of conspiracy-minded journalism was ripe for a 30-minute series?
Well, I think I was on the Daily Show and going to a bunch of different Trump rallies and trying to figure out where the country was about the end of the last election. And what we were starting to see was so many people getting their information from these fringe news sources. And so as we were trying to craft a character and a world to live in, it felt like this fringe was sort of what modern politics was all about. So we're like, if we're going to go into this Trump era, an era that lives in paranoia and distrust and anti-establishment, like let's try to build a world out of that.
And one of the things that I think is always interesting with the show, like what you're doing, where you play a version of yourself that's a character, kind of like what Stephen Colbert did, is it's always interesting to see how you find the rhythm of the character. And you can see this, like, I'm just going to use Colbert as an example. Like when you see what his first shows, he was very rigid within the character, but then as the time went on, you see he got a lot more comfortable with the rhythms of the character. What was it like for you to find the rhythms of this character and how you interplayed different situations with him?
I think that's a great question. It's something that, you know, in starting the show, you have a bunch of ideas as to what the show looks like, and you start to find its rhythms and its lanes where it feels better and like how loose this character should be. And I think like we're drawing from a bunch of different styles. Alex Jones has his own type of style. Hannity has his own style. So we're kind of crafting it from a couple different places. I think what we started to find is like what types of battles would this character fight? What types of segments can play along into that? Like we have a segment called War on Men. We have a segment called I Don't Recognize My Country Anymore. And that's where like the rhythms of the character really started to feel most fun. So it's like I could heighten up emotion. So it's I'm a victim and I can overplay this victim card. I can both take high status, but then feel like I'm being attacked and go low status. And so like those, like you quickly start to realize that we have a bunch of different colors that we can paint with. And you start to do that after a couple months being like, oh, I like this blue more than I like this red. Let's play those things that have a rhythm that feel more like they're character based in victimhood. Let's try to write pieces towards that. Let's try to find ways to show with the character. That's something you just start to live in, and you start to also build the show with the audience, which is what's partially fun about this show too. Like a challenge that we have is I am this heightened version of myself, but we have an audience too who is also looking to let Jordan Klepper shine through as well. And so you kind of loosen up your performance so it feels a little bit less stiff. And so an audience kind of can see both the character and the person behind it.
And that brings me to another thing I wanted to ask you about. You know, there are a lot of, sometimes the most priceless moments with that is when you break character and you just can't help it. Have there been any of those moments for you thus far?
Well, I think usually what makes me break most is outside whenever our assistant journalists are on and we're playing off of one another. I think one moment is we did when Donald Trump's diet got announced. It was 2 Big Macs, 2 Filet-O-Fishes, and a big chocolate malt. We then tried to cover Israel while I ate his entire MAGA meal, and we called it the MAGA meal challenge. And that was one of those things that, like, what we've started to have more fun is taking risks like that. Where it's like, we're going to write one of these things, but it's mostly going to be me eating and choking down food and trying to go with that. I choked. I almost vomited like 7 times. And so I then broke because of that situation. Like, and that's been part of the fun. It's like, oh, let's push this because we can be loose. We've started to add improvised second acts to the show as well as a way to sort of like push the boundaries of what we can do with this. And those are all surprise. Like, I don't know what's coming. I don't know what our writers have written up question-wise for me to respond to. And so there are moments like that where the break comes. I try to stay within character, but I think the fun is like, let's challenge this show and let's challenge this character so that we can walk that line.
And it's interesting you bring up your citizen journalist because I was actually just going to ask about 2 of them. I think probably, at least in my opinion, the biggest breakout stars of your citizen journalist. So they're all fantastic, but there's something about Aaron Jackson and Josh Sharp that is so, I can't even put my finger on it. They're so great, and they're quick-witted, and they have a great rapport with each other. Where did you find these guys?
They're amazing. I was working with both of them beforehand. Aaron and I were on an improv team together at the Upright Citizens Brigade years ago, and so I knew Aaron, and Aaron had done stuff with Josh, so I knew Josh kind of from the improv community. And they worked together as a duo, and they created this musical that they did together. That was one of the funniest things I saw on stage that year. In fact, the musical was paired with my wife, Laura Gray, also citizen journalist, her sketch show. And so like I went to the UCB, and I knew Aaron, I knew Josh, and they were just so funny together. And so when we were putting together what these citizen journalists could be like, they're so funny individually, but it was like, what if they've also crafted this, they have a voice together and they work so well together. It was like, I would love to incorporate that into the show, because why split them up when they have such a comedic unified voice? So that I was super lucky that they were willing to come on the show and add the little touch of chaos they bring to everything.
And it's weird. They bring with them this thing that's actually now kind of somewhat. It's not like a huge faction of the gay community, but this whole thing of like the gay Trump supporters. And do you just say to them like, just go and find something and do this and do what you want to do, or do you brainstorm together like some of those segments? And does it work that way with your other citizen journalists?
I mean, I think like it's a very collaborative space altogether. So like everybody's pitching ideas and things people are passionate about, we let them go explore. I think things that are on the day of show, like we'll break those ideas together in a room, but then you have to have a lot of trust when you're running a show that's on day in and day out. So like we'll come up with the take and the idea, and they'll pass it to like Aaron and Josh if it's their chat that they're doing. They kind of take it and work with the writers and put it in their voice. Or if it's like field pieces, we all kind of work on those together and go out into the field and then bring those back. And I think that's the fun with a show like this. I do think like they are aping a point of view that is out there, that is really fringy. Like also like these Milo characters who are all about like less political ideology and more just about like being like screw you to the system. And so it's really fun to kind of give them like their whole character POV that they're satirizing is one of just anarchy. And so to be able to throw that on pop culture, throw that on whether it's gay rights issues, or throw that on something that's not political whatsoever, like they bring that energy and you just let them run.
And you brought up your field pieces. I've always found those to be like such a great cornerstone. And what I like about your show is that we actually get, as opposed to, Colbert didn't do a lot of field pieces with correspondence, and neither did Larry Wilmore. What has been the craziest or scariest thing that you or your correspondents, at least with this show, have dealt with in filming a field piece?
Well, yeah, I gotta say, I'm super proud of our field department. I think I came from it with The Daily Show. Our EP was one of the people who helped run the field department at The Daily Show. Like we have a lot of people who have come with that background, and we also brought in new, exciting people from Vice and who had filmed on other types of shows. And so, like, that's one of our most exciting places. And I think, like, as a comedian and hiring the citizen journalist with that skill set, like, it's a really fun place to play. I think one that got some play and was pretty intense to even just watch. Kobe LeBee went and confronted Alex Jones in DC, and that was a wild experience because he was doing a big public event. He was pushing that he was getting attacked by journalists at that time, and so we brought the take that we thought he was a crisis actor because he had basically brought that into the conversation a month earlier. And I think that was what was unique. Kobe's experience there is one, going toe-to-toe with somebody like Alex Jones, but also the world that revolves around Alex Jones. Like you had all of his other citizen journalists like approaching Kobe, trying to get Kobe. And it's a bunch of people with cameras, putting cameras in your face, trying to get you and expose you. And just watching Kobe like beautifully maneuver what is already a weird, chaotic situation was really fun to watch.
That was something that was very surreal when I saw the clip of that. And to your point about how, I mean, in order to do this show, you have to, I'm guessing you kind of have to immerse yourself in the coverage that Fringe provides. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we're always, every morning we wake up and we check a bunch of different news sources. And part of it is like, what is The Fringe talking about, what's on social media, what's InfoWars talking about, what's Breitbart, what's Daily Caller, what is Twitter talking about, and then also checking more mainstream sources, CNN, Fox as well. And so you try to take in as much as you can and then figure out what the show can best reflect on its way out. So it's about eating as much and then figuring out how to digest. Which that sounds disgusting, but I think that's what I was going for. I think it's kind of disgusting.
When it comes to that material, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Whereas opposed to, MSNBC and CNN is like healthy eating and kale, and this is just lard and bury your face in it.
There you go.
Exactly. Which is also the name of my new cookbook that's coming out.
I'd love to read it. Yeah, there's some really delicious recipes in there.
Oh,
it may lead to the end of the world, but it's delicious.
They're all from Richmond. I'll just blame it all on the hipsters down there. It's kind of interesting that you bring that up, and I'm wondering because like sometimes if someone is doing this too much, like immersing yourself so much for a program, you can see it kind of take a toll. I think the most infamous one is probably Jon Stewart. You could see those last several years of the show, you could tell that having to absorb the media narrative of everything. I mean, Fox was probably the worst, but just everything was really taking a toll on him. Have you ever gotten to a point where your mind thinks a certain way or reacts to a certain story and you think to yourself, oh God, I'm in too deep?
Well, I think I would say, I'm still relatively new to this. John was in it for so long, and I think John was so brilliant at absorbing all this information and being able to then comment on it so articulately. I think where I get overwhelmed is I think after a big full day of digesting whatever it is Donald Trump has put out there, and then watching your Hannitys, your Laura Ingrams, there's days where then you just feel numb, where there are people yelling at you, telling you that the narratives you're getting are all lies and spinning chaos out of nothing. I think those are the days where I do have to turn TV off and just try to find something that is outside this world that can connect me, whether that's reality television, whether that's sports or talking to someone you love. It's usually sports. Like you find those things to try to ground you, because otherwise it's too easy to get caught up in the echo chamber that is the news cycle. I think you lose some perspective. So it's you got to be real careful there.
Yeah, I was actually wondering if it's going to be something like reality television. What programs do you find help you just turn everything off?
The one I've been obsessed with, the Great British Baking Show is.
Oh, I know so many people that love that.
I love that show. It's not political. It's so kind. Even though it's a competition, there's no anger. Everybody is supportive of one another. It's like the utopia that I want to be a part of. And so those days where I wake up full of anxiety, or my mind is just swimming in the chaos of the day, I put that on and I just watch an episode or two or three, and that is the world that I want to live in. One that's full of tea and crumpets and beautiful cakes made by 50-year-old British plumbers. Like that's utopia.
Well, no, I can't argue with that, because that is everything about what you said is right.
Yeah, that's it.
So one thing that I've always been curious about, since Comedy Central kind of developed this block from 11 o'clock and with 11 o'clock and 11:30, is there any coordination with the writers at The Daily Show about what events you're covering, how you're covering them, to make sure that you don't like overlap with jokes or a certain take on something? Is there any sort of coordination in terms so that the programs flow a bit better?
There is. So we are brother and sister programs in that sense. And so we try to have conversation throughout the day to stay up on it, so there's not overlap. I mean, the good thing about it is no matter what the story, we're going to have a different take and a different perspective on it. But midway through the day, we usually check in with the shows just to see where stuff is lining up. And sometimes there's stories that, of course, everybody's going to talk about because it's the story of the day. But then there's side stories that we look to try to be like, great, if you guys are doing that, then we're going to choose to go in this path. If there's stuff that we are both covering, we get scripts later in the day that we quickly look at to make sure we're not doubling up on jokes or perspectives there. So it's a balance with both shows. And in the Trump administration, everything moves so fast, like you can't be overly worried about those things. But we know that we want people to enjoy the Daily Show and enjoy the opposition together. And so it's one of those things where it's like, great, if the Daily Show is going all in on this thing, then we may touch it, but we can also shorten how we do it because the audience has already been caught up on that story. So we're just going to give you our perspective on it and then give you something else that feels different or is another story that nobody's talked about.
And so one last question I did have for you is I do love how you know, your character of Jordan, you know, comments on everything that's going on. But, you know, it seems like it's only a matter of time until your character gets into the news. And one way that could happen is at this year's Emmy race, if you get nominated for writing or for outstanding variety talk program. And it would even be crazier if you won for your character at least. For your character at least. If you're, how would your character react to you winning an Emmy for the opposition? Is what I'm trying to get at.
What I do think is at the core of this character, which is at the core of a lot of these characters, is they just want to belong. And so I think they would be so against winning an Emmy until they won an Emmy and then would be so excited about that situation. I think it's just like Donald Trump. Like if he got that Emmy, we wouldn't be where we are now. I think they just want an invitation to the party. So the Jordan Klepper character, he would be against the Emmys all the way up until the moment where he was invited to the party, at which case he would then shed his skin and he would give a giant hug to every member of that voting committee.
How do you think he would explain a photo of himself hugging Alec Baldwin?
I think he would say that he's a mole, and this is his inside move right now to try to see what's really going on inside the world of Alec Baldwin. But deep down, he'd just want a selfie with Alec Baldwin.
And also, that's a very, very, very dangerous road to go down.
You gotta walk that line.
Proceed with caution, I would say. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us. This has been great. The Opposition is on weeknights at 11:30 on Comedy Central, and we wish you all the best this Emmy season.
Awesome, Charlie. Thank you.